I'm sure if you're like most people, you've gone on a Caribbean vacation and thought, why does it have to end? Sun, sand, warm breeze. Why can't we live like this all the time? Owning property in the Caribbean is not just for retired snowbirds. Today, we're going to learn all about easy ways to invest in the Caribbean. So welcome back. I just wanted to introduce our special guest today, which is Lisa Rutty. Lisa helps people to buy and sell and invest in places such as the Caribbean. So we'd love to hear more about what you do and how you can, bring some value in information to our audience.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Charlene and Greg, for having me on the show. I love talking about smart money, but before we dive into smart money, just wanted to introduce myself a little bit to your subscribers. Yes, my name is Lisa Rutty. I am a licensed realtor here in Ontario, as well as in Jamaica. In addition to that, I do sell for developers in Mexico and the Dominican Republic and some other areas in the Caribbean as we grow because a lot of people are looking for the Caribbean right now. Outside of real estate, I'm very entrenched in our community. So with the Jamaican community, I am a chair with the Jamaican Canadian Association. So I chair the membership services committee there. I was also elected for the Global Jamaica Diaspora Council member. So I do represent Canada in addition to my colleague Rona Dunwell as well. So we represent Canada, where we work with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, acting as advisors, almost engaging the diaspora outside of Jamaica to bring back policy changes, just having our voices heard where that's regarding.
Nice.
Yeah.
You
Wow.
sound busy.
Yes, and we're glad that you were able to make time for us. I had no idea you did Mexico as well. You and I had a conversation about Punta Cana, where I have a property, and how things going there. So yeah, I guess we can ask as many questions of Lisa as possible.
Fire away.
Okay, so the obvious one right off the top is like, what are some of the benefits of purchasing property in the Caribbean? So for someone particularly in our neck of the woods in Toronto, in Canada, what are the benefits of possibly purchasing abroad?
Yeah, so there's quite a number of benefits, but I think one of the things is just tourism, right? Tourism, and when we look at the cost of owning in the Caribbean compared to the cost of ownership here in Canada, there's a vast difference. A lot of people are sitting on a lot of equity in their homes here. And when we talk about that sandwich generation, that's even one of the vehicles that people can use to invest. If you've got individuals that are, let's say their house is valued at over $1 million, their mortgage might just be $300. That's a huge amount of equity that they could potentially leverage to make a purchase in the Caribbean.
Hmm.
And when we look at the Caribbean, you can get a project, for example, in Mexico or the Dominican Republic, as small as 150,000.
Hmm.
This is like a very well safe community, let's say a one bedroom with over 600 square feet as an example. You can definitely acquire other properties under 100,000, but if you're looking for that clean modern look, in and around that 150,000. When we talk about Jamaica as an example, there's huge potentials there as well. You could look at something as small as 250,000 in some parts of the island. So there's huge potential just from a tourism perspective because the tourism numbers just from Brand Jamaica, Brand Dominican Republic, Brand Mexico, as an example, these are huge tourism destinations. And even when you look at flight availability going into these areas, you're not going to lose. So, leveraging your property here in Canada to make one of those purchases, then you are able to rent them out, Airbnb or long-term leases. The options are endless there, knowing that the number of tourism that's going there is very high. And not everybody wants the big all-inclusive. Some do, absolutely, but some want that local experience as well.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And those numbers that you were quoting, Lisa, are those in US funds?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
absolutely.
And is it difficult to purchase as a foreigner?
No, not at all. So when you look at Jamaica as an example, anyone can purchase real estate in Jamaica. The only requirement is your TRN number, which is the tax registration number. So very similar to us here in Canada with our SIN number, acts very much the same. And acquiring your TRN number is very simple. You're just downloading an application, you're getting your ID notarized, and you sending that down, and you can get your TRN in a matter of weeks. Even if you found a project or a property that you're interested in purchasing, you can purchase it with, well, you can put in an offer without that TRN, but you have to have that TRN before that property closes.
Purchase. Got it.
Yeah, yeah. And when you look at Mexico, the Dominican Republic, you don't require any sort of number or documentation to make that purchase. You can go ahead and make the purchase. The only caveat I would say with Dominican Republic and Mexico, the titles are handled just a little bit different if you are not a local. Absolutely, right? So that title, which is your title, which you can will, which you can sell, but it is held with a bank for a period, I believe, of 50 years or so.
Okay. Um, the other question I had was in terms of time spent on the ground, because I've been to, some other islands, and when some of the challenges were you need to commit a certain number of days per year on the island. Is that the same for, say, a Jamaica or other places that you're dealing with?
No, 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 absolutely not. You can make a purchase, not even spending one day on the island, so to speak. But yes, that there are Caribbean islands where you do need to look at the number of days, but also that's specific to if you're looking towards citizenship via investment, then
Mhm.
there are some minimum, maximum number of days on the island.
Okay, gotcha. And tell us a little bit about the mix. So let's say we have clients here in Toronto or in Canada, and like you said, sitting on a lot of equity, trying to figure out what to do with it. What sort of investment types are there? So you mentioned some properties that you could, rent out, Airbnb, obviously some that you can just live in if you wish to retire. Are there other things such as pure investment or commercial projects that you can get into, even pre-construction and things like that?
Absolutely. So, I mean, one of the hot projects right now on the island of Jamaica, that is, I keep having to remember, I represent multiple, is the Pinnacle in Montego Bay. That's a pre-construction project, and that is one of the most recent projects where you're able to purchase into the residential tower or more into a investment tower, and that will operate almost like a hotel, right? So it's very hassle-free, hands-off. You make the investment, and then the property management company will manage the rental of the unit as an example. You can start as low as six, no, so the one bedrooms are about 471,000 for
Mm.
the one bedrooms in that pre-construction project. These are all pre-construction pricing. And then the two bedrooms would start around 620. So when you look at your rate of returns for those investments for Jamaica, you're looking at roughly about 12 to 16% in Jamaica. Whereas the Dominican Republic, you're at about 14% with some of those pre-construction projects. And Mexico, you're around 9 to 10%.
Mm.
So there's huge rate of returns. And I have to say, I've experienced this personally, just for other properties that I've owned and how they have skyrocketed. Speaking to different clients who talked about they purchased a property a year and a half ago, and now it's doubled what we're now getting ready to list the property at. So the rate of appreciation is very high in the islands.
Okay. And for
So, sorry, Greg, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in terms of financing, so, in the case of someone that has some equity, and obviously they're going to make it work for them, they're not going to be putting all cash. In terms of the financing, for someone who's completely new, how would that work? Are they leveraging their credit and their bank connections in Canada? Are they utilizing a Jamaican bank?
Absolutely. So they can utilize a Jamaican bank. So there's two ways to look at it, right? So to a person who already owns a home in Canada that has equity in that home, I do suggest looking at refinancing or a HELOC, that home equity line of credit, to see how much they can get. And then they're going to be making the purchase in Jamaica as a cash purchase.
Okay,
Then you're paying the lower interest rate in Canada based on your refinancing.
got it.
Okay. The alternate option, if they don't own a home in Canada, is working with one of the banks in Jamaica to acquire a mortgage. All of your Canadian credentials will be used. So your credit, your job letters, your pay stubs, your debt ratio here as well in Canada, all of that will then help to determine what that mortgage amount that you would qualify for in essence. The interest rates are a little bit higher in Jamaica, so that's why I always make sure my client has the option of refinancing here or looking at a loan in Jamaica as well. And the great thing about it is it's very easy to not only get, but also to service. So it's not that you've got to get to Jamaica to make those payments. Everything is done electronically. So it makes it a lot easier.
But I want to fly down every month and make the payment.
Hey, I'm with you. Just take me with you.
So, Lisa, I was going to ask about bringing it back to the sandwich generation. Um, so, in terms of, say, I mean, Greg and I are around about the same age. I'm pretty sure you're quite younger than us. But, the older the children are, and even being our generation that came to Canada from other parts of the world. I find a lot of people are wanting to move back there because life is easier and they've got their grown kids. So their grown kids, for example, could be living in the house as well as their parents who might also want to move back. Are there a lot of multi-generational properties that are available in those parts of the countries because as well we're not getting any younger, the climate will be more conducive to you as you get older as well as your aging parents. Are there a lot, do you think, of multi-generational properties there?
Yeah, so I mean, I want to answer a few parts of your question there. Number one, yes, there's definitely multi-generational properties there, but also multi-generational in the sense of, for example, you might have your aging parent who wants to spend their winters in the island, right?
Mhm.
You, as the working adult, might not have that luxury just yet, and you just might be jealous of them because I know I am when my mom goes away. But the house can be used as for the elderly parents when they're there during the winter. You might go on the off times, you probably have kids. So, Christmas breaks, summer breaks,
Mhm.
March breaks, things of that nature. So you're not necessarily going to be there all the time together.
Mhm.
However, there are properties definitely that would have, separate entrances, separate apartments attached to them. There is a project in St. Mary, Jamaica, as an example, where some of their offerings are walkout basements. So you're not necessarily in a basement, you're literally walking out to that patio, but you can section that portion off. You can use that as rental income, and have upstairs be used for when your elderly parents visit or you visit or the kids visit, but downstairs is being used as income when you're not there. So there's different ways to section off the home, and that's just a home. And then the different properties, such as the one I talked about earlier, where it can be used in a rental pool, you're just simply blocking off the dates that you or your parents want to visit, and
Right.
it's generating income while you're not there.
Mhm. Okay.
In that last scenario, Lisa, would those be like you mentioned there is a property manager. Would these be like gated communities or how are these set up and
Absolutely.
developed?
Yeah. So gated communities having 24-hour security. There's lots of projects there as well that are their community within that community, right? So
Mm.
to the sense of having banks, healthcare facilities, supermarkets, restaurants. So it's your own little community within that gated community. And this is in addition to being close to local attractions. So you don't feel that you have to stay there. And for the most part, these are all fairly safe communities that you don't have to worry about exiting the community itself.
Gotcha.
That's great.
So basically, from what I hear is we could approach that almost like a turnkey situation. The minute you land, everything is there. When you leave, property management, rental income is sorted, maintenance and everything else is dealt with.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
Being thousands of miles away, we don't have the headaches that we would have, managing a traditional property where, we're on the hook and we have to run down and deal with small issues.
Exactly. And I mean, it's great too, because when you look at some of the products that are offered in the Dominican and Mexico, they actually include a furnishing project package as well. So
Mm.
it's literally turnkey where you don't have to do anything. And that's included in the price. Whereas the project in Jamaica, the furnishing package can be available at an additional cost. So really and truly, you can purchase something where you're legitimately just turning the key and having that opportunity. In addition to not just within these large projects, but there's a lot of persons that do Airbnb with their investments. I have two listings right now in Kingston where they are currently being used as Airbnb. They're being sold and the furnishings can be included. So somebody else purchasing it, you're literally purchasing something that is already being used as short-term rental. So everything is in the home and then it's a turnkey investment for you as well.
Nice. I'm trying to keep my technical questions low. In terms of the rental income and taxation, are there any challenges or any things that people should be aware of on that front?
Yeah, definitely speak to their tax accountant. Not going to give them advice in that regard. Disclosure there.
Mhm.
However, Canada and Jamaica, as an example, they do have a tax treaty. You are supposed to report your property that you own to the Canadian government.
Okay.
But from, tax levels, speak to your accountant so that you're aware of what your minimum and maximums are to protect yourself from that regard. But there are tax treaties in place.
Okay.
And
Excellent.
purchasing in the Dominican and Mexico, actually, you do experience 15 years tax free. So that's a huge plus there as well.
Oh, that's good.
Mhm.
But that is based on whether it's a new build or not.
That's correct. Yeah. New bill. Yes.
Okay. Um, and so as someone who's, our family has had property in Florida since I think 1985 or 1986. What would be the advantages of going to the Caribbean versus obviously now with, the tension with the United States and different things happening? Obviously, Florida is not necessarily the hottest spot for Canadians or snowbirds. What are some of the other perks that people could possibly look at that maybe we can get them to change their mind from thinking, Toronto, Florida, now Toronto, Caribbean?
So I think it's twofold, and one I'm not even going to mention. So I have two remaining. You read between the lines. um, so it's the dollar, right? So how
Mm,
far your dollar can go, it's definitely going to stretch a lot further in the Caribbean than it would in the US.
yeah.
And not that the US is not a huge tourism destination, it definitely is. But when you look at the number of tourism, so for example, in Jamaica, we had over 4.3 million visitors in 2024. That's huge. When you look at 4.3 billion as well from the tourism industry. So persons are not just looking at hotel accommodations or renting Airbnb or short-term rental, but it's all of the experiences that goes with that. And I think that's one of the areas to highlight with the difference between the US and in the Caribbean, persons just don't want to go to a destination and maybe just sit in the home or, their apartment for the entire stay. It's getting out and experiencing the culture and the different experiences that you can have on the islands as well. And I may be biased. I'm going to admit that I'm biased, but I think many would share the same sentiments as me. It's a different feel being in the Caribbean than it is in the US by far.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Um, last, I don't know, 15, 16 years, I'll admit I haven't been to Jamaica yet, but the last 15 or 16 years, year after year, we've gone to, we were right next door in the Cayman Islands. And one thing I will say that I've seen in that time frame is the price of real estate going through the roof, the level of affluence that's on the island, and the diversity of people that are coming to these places who are getting away from, going to Disney and all the usual stuff. People are venturing a little farther. But what that also does, it seems to have pushed the affordability for, some of these sort of investment properties higher and higher and higher. Are you seeing similar trends in Jamaica? And who are the buyers typically?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I have to go back to your comment about the Cayman Islands, which a beautiful destination. And when you look at islands like the Cayman, Bermuda, they are very expensive, very affluent demographics there for sure. But I mean, for me personally, it's not as beautiful as many of the other Caribbean islands when you talk about like the lushness, the food, the people, the culture. And I say that because a lot of people, when they hear the price of Jamaica as an example, they're like, oh my God, it's so expensive now. And really, it's not. When you compare to the other Caribbean islands, it is very cheap. In fact, it's undervalued, in my personal opinion.
Yeah.
It has skyrocketed over the last, I would say, 5 to 6 years, but I truly believe we've just scratched the surface and it's on that upward trajectory because you're looking at other islands that don't have as much from a tourism or brand Jamaica's perspective,
Yeah.
and Jamaica selling for much less than those other islands.
Yeah. No, I can definitely attest. I mean, the 2 bedroom, 2 bath that we, go to year after year after year. I inquired and it's 2.5 million US. So I immediately turned around and left. I like it, but I don't like it that much.
And I don't know if you remember, do you remember what the square footage was of that?
It is around 900 square feet.
Okay. So
So
where
not
you can,
huge, but it is like literally 100 meters from the
Beachside.
beach. Like
Yeah.
you're right there and you have
Mhm.
everything at your disposal. So along 7 Mile Beach in Grand Cayman, once you get to the north end, there's a lot of nice um, sort of low-rise condo, 3-story villas and everything. They're great, nice and quiet. But when you look at the price, it makes you sort of scratch your head. And like when we first started going, maybe 1 million US, you could get something. And back then it was like, well, it's a little bit of a stretch, but look at what you get. And now it's like almost 3 times that price.
Yes. Yes.
Uh, yeah, no.
Yeah. Whereas in Jamaica, you can get something that's 1,000 square foot, also, on the beach as well, and you're paying maybe seven, or just under seven. And one thing with Jamaica too, and I'm sure in the Cayman Islands as well, everything is on a floor as well as a view premium, right? So the
Yeah.
higher you go, depending if you've got that sea view or not, the price would increase.
Mhm.
I mean, it's not just places like Jamaica. I mean, like you had said, I believe in the Caribbean, we've just really scratched the surface of the potential
Yes.
of what it is, what it can be. And I know that a lot of people have decided, good or bad, that they're going to be moving back there. Canada is not for them, Toronto is not for them. Um, in certain experiences, I kind of feel the same way. Um, Also, I think that we're seeing a lot more Europeans. Like I've been to quite a few of the islands, Bahamas, Antigua, Punta Cana, a lot of those islands, just recently came back from Aruba, a lot of Europeans. It's what's the word I'm looking for? It's a large amount of them that are coming to number one, Brits. They're trying to get away from that cold, damp weather that they have, and they're there for, between 10 and 14 days in some cases because the flight is so
Yeah.
long. We're lucky that the Caribbean is just like 4 hours away from us. So yeah, I think it's a good fit for most people.
Absolutely. And one of the things, just going back to what Greg was saying with regards to the price, one of the things I really urge people to do, and this also speaks to that sandwich generation, because it might have been what happened to their parents. They have a vision in mind of what they would like to acquire from a property perspective, and they'll look at the price and say, okay, I can't get that now. Let me continue to save. Or if I can't get this, then I'm not going to get anything at all. And I urge people, if it's even a studio, if it's even a one bedroom, it doesn't matter. Get what the budget is that you have, whatever capital you have to invest, seek something that is within that price range and invest. Even if you say to me, Lisa, but I'm a family of four, or I need room for when my mom goes. No, then go and rent an Airbnb when you travel that once a year or twice a year. But then your investment for you, that studio or that one bedroom, is making money for you. The
Mhm.
key that we also talked about before is the fact that the properties are appreciating very quickly. If you are to secure that one bedroom or that studio bedroom, even though you want that three-bedroom house, in 2 to 3 years, that one bedroom is going to give you so much in equity that you're then able to either leverage it or sell it and then make the purchase of what you do want. But you have to start somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the three of us agree on all that. I mean, Greg, if you had bought, 15, 16 years ago at $1 million,
Hey,
you'd have
You'd be
new
sitting at 3
friends.
million right now.
stop
Well, yeah,
depressing
you'd
me.
have new friends in Lisa and I, and then
Absolutely.
you would also have the added plus of having something that's worth 2.5 million now.
Well, that
Absolutely.
I was there like, I don't know, 4 weeks, 5 weeks ago, and I was thinking that as I'm sitting on the beach, I'm thinking, okay, we should have blah blah blah. But again, a lot of the owners of those units bought in the late 70s and early 80s. So I remember there was a gentleman who was there. He paid, I think, 90 something thousand US way back then. And now his unit is pushing 2.5 to $3 million, but he's also 90. So, and then when I looked at the price of the unit that I was in at 2.5 million, it was coming out to about 16 or $17,000 per month to service that. So once you start to look at rental income, like, yes, you could theoretically break even in the peak seasons, but assuming you have maybe one or two hurricanes every few years, you wind up with another COVID situation, or the US dollar gets out of whack and people like that's way too expensive. Servicing that month over month, even if it's just 3 months of downtime, I'm like, wait, hold on. This is not making sense.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I like Lisa's idea of staying within your budget of something that twofold. One, you can carry if you need to, and B, if no one is using it and you're not making income, well, you can just take, a $1,500 flight and go and enjoy it for a week or two. You still have access to it.
You
Right.
also have
Um,
new friends like me that can go and use it.
yeah. I did have one other question for you, Lisa. In terms of affordability, as you were talking, something piqued my interest. Are there sort of fractional ownership or fractional investment schemes that you know of, whereas, people can sort of partner up and pay into a project, like a new construction or a development project, where they don't own specifically a property outright, but they are sort of a fractional investor in a project?
Yeah, so I mean, there are some that are on each of the islands that I represent. I'll be honest, I try and steer individuals away from those from a fractional standpoint. And I pitch or I speak to it more as, if the three of us, as an example, have 50,000 each, why not us three go and get something that's 150,000 and then we do a joint venture? Then we own the entire property together versus
Right.
a fractional ownership, right?
Right.
Fractional ownership gets a little tricky when you start to look at disposing of that asset, especially if different mentalities are in the mix. So I always try to have people look at it from a joint venture, or even investing is not just into purchasing that real estate assets, but there's also REITs that are available that persons can look into investing as well.
Right. Right.
One other thing too that persons can look at is, I know there are a ton of people in the Caribbean that generationally might have land sitting there that's not doing anything for them, from their grandparents or parents and so forth. But there's government initiatives because they are looking to provide affordable housing as well. So, for example, NHT in Jamaica National Housing Trust, if you've got land that's, 10 acres or more, especially in low density areas, you can sell that land to NHT where they can do affordable housing, right? So it's not just sitting on the land and thinking, oh, I've got to develop it myself. You can partner with a developer and do a joint venture so that you can develop the land. So there's multiple ways to look at it. And that's one thing that people should look into, speak to an individual professional and just kind of see what all of their options are.
That's a good point. No, I think there's a lot of people here that may have family property and so on that maybe we've overlooked that we can leverage and utilize and all the rest of it.
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
I have nothing. It's been very, very informative, Lisa. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. I could talk about Caribbean real estate all day. So
Our bags are packed.
let's go. Actually, one last point I do want to point out that I've done in conjunction with Caribbean Vibrations before, where we do real estate cruises. That has been really informative, where persons might not be affiliated or very familiar with a specific island. So the opportunity to go to each specific island, I bring them on 3 different developments on each of the islands so they get a taste for what's there. And then later on, you can have further conversation on a specific island that you may have fallen in love with. So
Yes,
that's
I
a
did.
nice way to do.
Yeah, I saw you on there. That is a great, great initiative, great idea. It just explains everything so simply to everyone. Love to be able to go on one of those cruises.
Yes. I've got
One
you
day.
name down for it.
Awesome.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much, Lisa. We really enjoyed chatting with you today, and we got lots out of this discussion. We're going to leave your contact information and more details in a description of the video. But yeah, we'd love to have you on again and chat more and learn more about the Caribbean. I think there's a ton of opportunity there. So until we have that chance again, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
Thank you, and
Lisa.
thank you for having me on. Thank you.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure.
Okay.
Thanks for watching. If you liked what you saw, make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons and stay tuned for even more smart money episodes.